Little Claus and Big Claus. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived two men named Claus. To distinguish them, the one who owned 4 horses was called Big Claus, and the other, who owned only 1 horse, was called Little Claus. Every week, Little Claus had to plow for Big Claus and lend him his 1 horse. In return, Big Claus would lend Little Claus all 4 of his horses, but only once a week, on Sundays. Little Claus would proudly crack his whip over all 5 horses, pretending they were all his own. One Sunday, as Little Claus was driving Big Claus's horses home from church, he met a group of old women. The women were arguing over who owned a beautiful dog. They decided to let the dog decide by following whichever person it walked home with. Little Claus saw his chance to get a new dog. He quickly unhitched one of Big Claus's horses and tied it to the dog's leash. The dog, happy to be free, followed Little Claus home. When Big Claus came to collect his horses, Little Claus refused to give him back the dog. Big Claus was angry, but there was nothing he could do. Little Claus had outsmarted him. The next day, Little Claus was driving his own horse to town when he met a group of men. The men were talking about a magical well that could make people rich. Little Claus was excited. He wanted to be rich too. Little Claus asked the men where the well was located. They told him it was in a forest nearby. Little Claus thanked the men and drove off to find the well. When Little Claus found the well, he lowered a bucket down into the water. When he pulled the bucket up, it was full of gold coins. Little Claus was overjoyed. He had finally found his fortune. Little Claus filled his cart with the gold coins and drove home. He was so rich that he no longer needed to work for Big Claus. He bought a new house, a new horse, and even a new wife. Big Claus was jealous of Little Claus's newfound wealth. He wanted to know how Little Claus had gotten so rich. One day, Big Claus followed Little Claus to the magical well. He watched as Little Claus lowered a bucket into the well and pulled it up full of gold coins. When Little Claus had gone home, Big Claus lowered his own bucket into the well. But instead of gold coins, he pulled up a dead snake. Big Claus was furious. He had been tricked. He drove home to confront Little Claus. When Big Claus arrived at Little Claus's house, he found Little Claus sitting in his garden, surrounded by his wife and children. Big Claus demanded to know how Little Claus had gotten the magical well. Little Claus laughed. He told Big Claus that he had found the well by accident. He also said that he had been the one to tie the dog to the leash, not the other way around. Big Claus was even angrier now. He knew that Little Claus was lying, but he had no proof. He stormed off home, vowing to get revenge on Little Claus someday, and so, Little Claus lived happily ever after, while Big Claus was left to stew in his own jealousy.